I have been collecting Black Templar for a very long time, and I have amassed quite the collection. You might think that I own every single Black Templar model, and that is almost true. There is one singular holdout, and it is this guy, the Black Templar's Execrator. There's a reason that I haven't picked this guy up yet, but I do want to experience everything the Black Templar has to offer. And until Games Workshop makes some new kits, this guy is the last thing on my bucket list. The Execrator is one of 2 new characters Games Workshop added to the Black Templar range in 10th edition, and he was a big hit. Until folks saw the rules. Since then, he's been kind of a niche include to say the least. He comes in a nice big character sprue, and I can already see there are some extra parts and weapon options. One thing that is not optional though is the pose. It's a cool running pose, but the parts of his body and legs are all fused together, so I won't be able to get a second one of these and then reconfigure him to look different. I cleaned up all the parts to make him perfect, and in terms of gluing him together, he felt exactly like a Black Templar sword brethren. In his right hand, he holds the Crozius Arcanum, the symbol of his place in the Reclusium, and a relatively lame melee weapon. A power sword with worse AP, but on his other hand, he has a suite of different options. The Absolver Bolt Pistol, a Pyre Pistol, or a master-crafted power weapon. The power weapon is where it's at. The Pyre Pistol is fine in very specific situations, like blobs at Orc Gretchen, but the extra 3 master-crafted power sword swings brings him up to 8 punches in melee. I glued on the sword and then the fancy topper on his boinking stick. He is going to boink some orcs with that thing. On his backpack there are some options as well, the Iron Halo or the Templar Cross. I'll never poo-poo a Templar Cross, but obviously the Iron Halo is an actual piece of war gear with rule significance, so it's the more appropriate option. I've got my little Execrator here, and this guy is new for Black Templar in 10th edition, and according to the new lore in the new Black Templar's Codex, he is just a chaplain. He is a Black Templar's flavored chaplain, but the unique thing about this guy is, since the Black Templar believe that the Emperor is an actual god, he leads his battle brothers in worship during battle. Like, as they're charging into the Orc Horde, he is leading his battle brothers in prayer. It's kinda neat. It is nice to get our own Black Templar specific chaplain. And speaking of chaplains, although historically the Black Templar love our chaplains, nowadays in 10th edition, chaplains and the Black Templar don't really mix very well, and that's down to the chaplains thing. Chaplains attached to units give +1 to wound, an amazing ability for combat units, but in the 10th edition Black Templars, we have our Righteous Vows, and the best one of those vows is +1 to wound. So we kind of already have that baked in, and so otherwise there's no real reason to attach a chaplain. Luckily, the Black Templar's Execrator, he does not give +1 to wound, he gives Advance in Charge, which is a very nice ability. Now where this falls apart a little bit is what he's allowed to lead. This guy can attach to Crusader squads and Sword Brethren squad, the meat and potatoes of a Black Templar's army. That seems like a really good option, but there's already 5 Black Templar characters who can only attach to Sword Brethren and Crusader squads, and then there's like another 5 character options in regular Codex Space Marine that can attach to the Crusader and Sword Brethren squad. So this guy has some real stiff competition on him leading my squads, and he just doesn't really stack up. Getting to Advance and Charge is really good, but Black Templar combat units kind of need a little bit of help once they get into combat. A Marshal gives crits on 5s and 6s, a Castellan gives reroll hits, a regular Space Marine Captain gives free stratagems, and a Lieutenant gives lethal hits. Like, all of those are really good melee buffs that really help once you get into combat. This guy doesn't grant any buffs, and so he'll definitely make it a lot easier to get into combat, but he's not helping out very much once you're there. I've been racking my brain trying to figure out where this guy fits into my army. He's okay, there is something here. And speaking of the something here, I do really like this kit. It's got all sorts of extra bits, and it's got so many extra bits that I actually think I might be able to get a second Execrator out of this kit. I've got them mostly together, and seeing so many bits still in the sprue, it's given me ideas. I clipped out the extra parts, and the most important pieces are the extra head and the extra Crozius topper. These are really the only 2 things specific to chaplains, so if I use the bare head on the Games Workshop original, I can put the skull helm on whatever I want. I grabbed a box of Black Templar Sword Brethren, probably the greatest box Games Workshop has ever made, and I clipped out a body to be turned into a chaplain. There are only a few differences between this body and the Execrator. One of those is the chest. The Execrator has a bare metal chest, and the Sword Bro has cloth. This difference would probably look fine, but I want to make a match, so I clipped off the cloth part and then got ready to sculpt. I mixed up some milliput and green stuff, mixing all 4 balls of putty together to get greenaput. This makes a nice sticky material that putties really well. I took a blob and stuck it under the lip of his armor to rebuild the tabard that hangs over his tummy. I used my silicone sculpting brushes to poke and prod it into shape, and when I was happy, I glued down his lower half. Then for his chest, there was a dent where the cloth was meant to go, and so I made up a sheet of green put and I rebuilt this. I squished it down and carved away the excess until I had a nice smooth, undecorated chest armor. Looking at them side by side, they really look similar. Now to find some arms. I have an extra martial kit I got out of a combat patrol box, and I stole the power axe bit, and I think I'll be able to turn this into the shaft of a Crozius Arcanum. Then I stole a power sword from the Sword Brethren kit. In the world of Black Templar kit bashing, the bits are more specific than you would think. Crusader Squad weapons have a slightly less fancy chain that connects the weapons to their arms, where the Sword Bros and characters get a fancy version. I made sure my Execrator got the fancy versions. I played around with posing using blue poster putty to get the angle right, and once I was happy, I carved away the Sword Bro arm to accept the Marshal's power axe. I drilled a 1mm hole into his wrist so I can insert a pin so that his arm is connected rock solid. Then, to permanently attach his arms, I used some more green put as a spacer so I could slightly edit the poses of these arms on my Execrator number 2. After a little super glue, they look like a mirror image of each other. And you know what else looks good in mirrors? That's right, our website. On EonsOfBattle.com, we're all restocked on our excellent hobby goodies. Gamer grass tufts, Grey Tide Studio bits for your Space Marines, Army Painter paints, brushes, base and cork, ultra thick and ultra thin super glue, and we've got terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month, members get a credit good for any one terrain pack we've ever made or the brand new one. New in May, we have created the Cyber City, a set of terrain perfect for any fast-paced war game. These beautiful gleaming buildings are the picture of future affluence, ready to be fought over and on top of. These pieces were designed to give plenty of line-of-sight blocking terrain with lots of rooftops for miniatures to stand on. And with a stacking system, you can build your boards up into the air with lots of catwalks and staircases, letting you battle in the third dimension. To sprinkle around your city, there are some sci-fi accessories like the line-of-sight blocking hologram projectors, rooftop doors, computer terminals, crates, and snack machines. Everything a future battlefield needs. This terrain set was designed by us and is available at EonsOfBattle.com. Digging through my bits bin, I found this Chaplain Mini. I don't like the look of the original Primaris Chaplain, but he does have a backpack with an iron halo. I stole this bit from my Execrator and glued it on. Now to turn his power axe into the Crozius. I cut off the axe head and then cleaned up the studded handle where the power cable used to connect into. Then I drilled a tiny little hole down the shaft so I can insert a pin. The top of the Crozius is too small to drill into, but luckily it's hollow on the inside, so I just glued it to the front of the pin. Then, to trap it in place, I took a skull from the Citadel Skulls box, and because Games Workshop is weirdly consistent with the size of their skulls, this slid right into place, sandwiching my pin. Only a couple things left. I found a book that I glued to his butt to match the Execrator kit, and for shoulders, I have these aftermarket Mark V studded shoulders, and I glued these onto the left shoulders, and on the right, I gave them each one of the fancy shoulders from the Execrator kit. The Games Workshop original got the bear head, and my invented Execrator got the skull helm. I glued on all the purity seals from the Execrator kit, as well as a few more I stole from the Assault Intercessor kit, and then there are 2 Execrators complete. But I'm not done yet. In my crusade, my battle brothers wear the skulls of their power armor's deceased previous owners, and I clipped off these skulls from the Citadel Skulls box and I glued these onto the backpacks. Drilling some holes into their foreheads to accept the sewing straight pins I use as scale nails pinning these heads to the armor. Then to further embellish my guys, I want to make some candles. I took some thin electrical wire and I cut off some small lengths. I stripped the wire off a half of these and then touched the tip of the wire to my hot glue gun and then slowly pulled the glue away, leaving me with a little droplet of glue. To attach these, I stuck down some more green put onto the backpacks and I smushed it down with the ball-ended sculpting tool. Then I dipped the bottom of my homemade candles in super glue and I smushed these into the putty. I arranged a few candles on each backpack to further smooth the transition, and I brushed on some wood glue over the seam. This glue is very thick, and when it's dry, it'll fill the in-between the putty and plastic wire, making them seamless. Now those are some Black Templars Execrators. To give them some bases, I took some 40mm cobalt keep magnet bases and I started loading them up with some pieces of pine bark nuggets. Hot glue is the best thing I found for this, and I mixed up some more milliput to smush into the gaps. I like how random the nuggets are. I just build them and figure out where my guys will attach later. On the big flat spots, I added some more wood glue and then sprinkled on some small pebbles, coarse sand, and then some fine grained sand. Then to attach my guys, I took a 1mm drill bit and I drilled up into my model's feet and then down into the bases using a piece of brass rod to pin my guys down permanently. And I'm still not done. Gotta add some orc skulls to the bases. My crusade is currently battling the orcs, so I like to add a couple of orc skulls to each of my desert bases. I super glued these down and then I used some texture paste to blend them in. Now, my models are perfect. These guys look so good. They look so good. And I really want them in my army. Just the trouble is they can only attach to Sword Brethren squad and Crusader squad. If I could stick these guys in a cheap and cheerful squad of Assault Intercessors, I would do it tomorrow. That would actually be extra good because the Assault Intercessor squad would buff them, granting reroll wound roll on objectives. So I could keep the squad like safely in a building 15 inches away from an objective and then just slam them in. Or another cool option would be Reavers. I've been wanting to buy a Reaver squad all 10th edition. The trouble is they're just kind of not very good. And when you attach these guys, they don't become good, but they become a lot more interesting. The Reaver squad has precision on all their little knives, so the unit runs in, and then the Reavers shank a character to death with their knives, and then this guy slams in with all of his combat attacks. And then the Reavers cause battle shock on the way in, and then he causes battle shock on the way out. And it's just a really, really fun thing that is impossible because you're not allowed to do it because it's so restrictive. Games Workshop said that Black Templar guy can only attach to Black Templar things. If you want a sub 200 point unit, it's gonna have to be the Sword Bros. Well, am I allowed to take more than 3 Sword Bros in a list? No! Like, why does Games Workshop insist on writing my army list for me? It's very frustrating. I threw my boys up onto some paint handles and I hit them with a black prime. Then from above, I sprayed a Zenithal of white ink, doing 2 coats to get them bright and then a coat of satin varnish to protect this ink layer from my Templar soup. This is a concoction I have invented that is a mix of Games Workshop contrast paints, Black Templar, Leviathan Blue, and Lamian Medium. This is what I've used on all the armor on all my Black Templar minis. I painted this on all the bear armor. This is where I stop for rank and file Battle Brothers, but because these are characters, I want to make them a little bit extra nicer, so I took some wolf gray and I mixed it with black and white to make some highlight colors for the armor. I painted this on as edge highlights everywhere, and in a few spots some reflective highlights like the top of their knees, the back of their legs, and the top of their chest armor. This extra layer of paint makes the dark armor look reflective, like the light is catching on all the edges. With the black done, it was time for a little bit of bony matter. I like this color on their shoulder pads. Like the crisp white paint has aged to a dull tan over my Templar's 200-year-long campaign against Nyx's Blue Orcs. I highlighted this with white paint along the top of their shoulder pads, and then for the purity seals I took some desert yellow and I glazed this on, mixing it with white paint to get some highlights, and I layered these up to almost white parchment. I think I use a different recipe every time I paint purity seals. I've never landed on something perfect, but this worked pretty good. Now for the red. My favorite red is one of the John Blanche colors, Fiery Vermilion. I mixed this with black to make a darker red, and I base coated their tabards, the purity seal wax, and the trim on their shoulder pads. Then I added some more Fiery Vermilion back into my dark red to make a brighter red, and I used this to glaze on the high spots of the red bits. After that, some glazes of pure Fiery Vermilion, going over and over until I had full vibrant coverage. And to make the red look extra shiny, I also edge highlighted the lower spots. Now to pump up the saturation even more with some legendary red. This is a red-orange color, and I like to use it as a final highlight over reds to make them look even brighter. That's the reds taken care of. I used some black paint on my palette to hit the Templar crosses on their shoulders, using a little bit of gray to edge highlight these shapes. I'm just knocking things out on these guys. Next up, their belts and books. I took some Dryad Brown and I base coated these bits, then I washed them with Darkwood speed paint, then I did some highlights with Desert Yellow. I think I also use different browns every time I paint belts. Even after 10 years, my Templar scheme is a work in progress. I painted the pages of their books with some white paint, then a wash with some more bony matter. A lot of their bits are done. Next up, the gold. For this, I used some more Desert Yellow, thinning this into a glaze and putting this all over the weapons and iron halos. Next, I thinned down some Darkwood speed paint and I put this over the brown, turning it redder and darker in the recesses. Then I mixed my Desert Yellow with some Demonic Yellow and I did a dry brushing over the gold to brighten up the edges and details. I'll eventually put some metallics over these spots, but I'll do that last. Next step is Noble Skin over the rest of the metals, their chains and shackles. Now my guys are looking good, it's time to tackle this guy's head. My Templar scheme has a lot of dark colors, so I like to use bright colors for skin. To start, I took a Wicked Pink, very thin down, and I glazed this over his entire head. This vibrant color will keep my colors intense. Then I took Barbarian Flesh and I started painting on some highlights, working in layers so I don't cover all the magenta. Once I had my highlights rubbed in, I washed his head and Goddess Glow. This will blend my layers together and make his details darker. After that, a few more layers of Barbarian Flesh highlights, then some final highlights of Barbarian Flesh mixed with white paint. I dotted his eyes with black, then white, then for pupils, more black paint and his face is done. I always need to just paint a Games Workshop face to know if it looks good, because I think he looks great. Like a 200-year-old scarred up soldier guy who's been screaming for hours. The Games Workshop box art makes him look like a Leagues of Votan dwarf. With bare head guy done, I can knock out the skull helmet guy. I put pallid bone over his dome, and while I was at it, I also put this on all the skulls in the backpacks. To highlight, I grabbed some bony spike, and I thinned this down into a glaze, and I started working up to his scary skull helmet. Doing layer after layer, getting his forehead, temples, cheeks, and teeth crispy white. I also did these highlights on the backpack skulls as well. Once I was happy with the look, I dotted his eyes with red, and my execrators are well on their way to warming my shelves until the rules change. These guys are the most Black Templars-y Templars to ever Black Templar. They're so cool looking. And I've been racking my brain to try to figure out how to make these guys work, and there is a way to make them better, and that is in the Black Templars attachment, Champions of Vehemence. This is a detachment built all around very specifically the Execrators and Chaplain models. The ability is reroll, advance, and charges, which is fine. It kind of pairs nicely with these guys giving a unit advance and charge, so you get to advance and charge and reroll everything. Now, I've played a heck of a lot of 10th edition, and honestly, I almost never fail charges. And when I do, I always spend the CP to reroll it, but what happens is I've rolled a 4, and then I reroll it into a 2. And so these guys and this attachment wouldn't have saved me from that. I guess it would save me the command point, which is not nothing, but where this detachment starts to get a little spicy is in the enhancements. All of the enhancements can go onto chaplain units, so it could go on the execrators. One of them is +1 AP for the squad, which is phenomenal. Although I don't think I would give it to the execrators, I would probably give that to a jump pack chaplain attached to a squad of assault intercessors of the jump pack. All of a sudden, all of those chain swords are getting 2 AP. That's pretty darn spicy. There's another enhancement that gives reroll hits, and that would be really good. Probably would also not give that to the execrator. I would probably give that to a chaplain in Terminator armor attached to a bunch of assault terminators. All of a sudden, all of those thunderhammer swings are connecting, and that would be really juicy. Basically, if I was bringing the execrator detachment, I still would be hard pressed to want to include some execrators. My little execrators are coming along smoothly. Next up, the power swords. And I've fallen out of love with how I've done power swords in the past. I want to try something new, and step 1 is creating the glow the swords are reflecting onto their armor. I took some gray paint and I glazed this right over the spots that their swords are almost touching the armor. These are the highlights in preparation for some blue color, magic blue. I glazed this over the highlights to tint them blue, and I put this right on top of all the work I've already done. It looks a little bit silly now, but after the sword, it'll look great. I took regal blue and I base coated my sword. This is a darker base coat than I usually do. Then for the dark spots, deep ocean blue. I glazed this on in a couple of stripes on the sword. Then I mixed just a little bit of black paint into this blue and I glazed it for the deepest, darkest spots. Then for the highlights, typically I've done white, but that's hard and annoying. Instead, I took Neptune's glow and I mixed it 50-50 with regal blue, and I used this for my highlights. This covers much better than white paint, and in just a few watery coats, I had some nice deep blue shimmers running up my sword. I did some edge highlighting with pure Neptune glow along the sides and up the shaft. Then for some excitement, I took white paint and I glazed this along the little power cable and along the hilt of the sword. Then I painted a bunch of wiggly little lightning bolts running around the power cord. This was much more fun to do than highlighting the power stripes up to pure white. I'm really happy with how these swords are looking, and I used some of the blues on my palette to strengthen the reflections coming off the swords on their armor. Those are some power swords. To paint the candles, I took some castle gray and I base coated them. Then I took some tundra taupe and I used this to darken and warm the bottoms of my candles. Then for the flames, I painted a gradient of yellows and reds with the light colors on the bottom and dark on top. The wicks got black, and then the belly of my flames got yellow. Then a yellow-orange mix, then red, then dark red, then black. Then glazes in between all of these layers to make them smooth and perfect. I added another dot of white to the bellies of my glazes, and then more yellow, and I did a little bit of white reflecting on the top of the candle wax to make them look like the candles are giving off some light. Now that is some execrators. I hit both due to the coat of satin varnish, and now it's time for some true metallic metals. I used Vallejo light greenish gold dry brushed all over the golden bits to give those edges a nice shine, and I did the same thing to the chains with mithril blade. I also gave the top of the gold a few swipes of this as well for the brightest, shiniest reflections. I brushed this onto the couple of spots where there were some little metal elements, and I almost forgot weapon handles in my army are all painted purple. Diabolic Plum to the rescue. Now my minis are done, and it's time for those bases. I used Vallejo Earth and Pro Krill Olive Flesh. The Vallejo Earth gets sprayed on super watery through the airbrush to tint the Zenithal overspray, and the Olive Flesh gets dry brushed on to bring out the textures. I dry brushed the orc skulls with white paint, and then I hit the base rims with a couple of coats of gloss black paint. Now, for names. Top supporters on our website get immortalized as members of my crusade with custom nameplates. We also sell these as print on demand on our website. I painted them up and then stuck them down to the front of the bases. Execrator 1 and Execrator 2. I got the G-Dub Classic and then I got my version, and I might like my version a little bit more. It's probably because I stole the skull helmet and I put it on my own guy, but these guys are really slick. Every time I finish a Black Templar model, that becomes my new favorite model. And even though these guys aren't anything special in-game, in fact, they're probably bad, I'm glad I put them together, and I'm glad I was able to get 2 guys out of there, because 11th edition is rapidly approaching, and it'll probably shake up the game, and fingers crossed, these guys will get hopefully a lot better. These 2 guys are some of my best painted Black Templar figures. My Black Templar recipe is getting more precise and perfect with every single miniature, and I really like how these power swords turned out. I think this is going to be how I do power swords from now on, and that does mean that I have like 50 power swords in my army that might need a touch up. Honestly, my whole Black Templar army, I mean, I've been painting it over the course of like 10 years, and I've been doing it the exact same way for like 7, and so I need to figure out, like I need to get them all out and then spend maybe a week just touching up every single guy and making sure that every single one of them is absolutely perfect, because my Black Templar, they're my babies. It's my favorite army. Now that I've painted up these two guys, I've painted every Black Templar unit in the game. I mean, technically, I haven't painted a Crusade Ancient as a Crusade Ancient, so I don't have one of those. But if you can believe it, those guys are even worse than these guys, so I don't know, we'll see if I ever get around to it. Thanks for watching.